Hey guys, welcome back. So we are in one of the biggest, coolest, funnest, intensest modules of the course. We're going to talk today about how to analyze a multifamily deal. And this is such a vast study of knowledge. So I just want to set precedents for what I would hope you would get out of this would be the ability to analyze the deal at the first two stages, I'm going to call it. So stage one is what we call napkin underwriting. That's what this module is about. And stage two is to go into a little bit more detail. But I don't want you to think that you have to or will even be able to fully analyze a deal like a debt broker would or like a super advanced 10-year person in the business would. That's why we have partners. That's why we can even have our debt broker underwrite these deals to compare it to our underwriting. We can also have the people in our business that know this better than us do the same thing. So the idea here is to make you valuable in the streets where you can go out and get deals, you can analyze them quickly, you can throw out the 95% that suck, and then you can take the other ones that are left over and you can go a little bit deeper with them, and you can come up with something that is valuable and to present to your partners and to your the people you want to work with in this industry. So the first part of that is to know and understand what I call napkin underwriting. And this is pretty simple. It kind of depends on if you're for some people that are into math and super analytical, this is going to be really fast. For other people, it may take a little longer to learn it. But all these things take time and they take practice. But in order to understand napkin underwriting, what we need is to know a couple of terms. All right, so the most important term, I believe, in commercial real estate is net operating income, also known as NOI. Okay, and that's one term that we need to define. There's two main terms we need to define before we jump in here. One is net operating income, and the other one is a cap rate. So what is net operating income? It's a mouthful for sure. Net operating income is all of your gross revenues. So gross revenue plus other income minus expenses. So the easiest way to think about this is it's all the money that you make minus what your expenses are. Now there is one caveat that throws people off in net operating income, and that is that I feel like the camera's shaking there. Hold still. That's really weird. That is that the mortgage is not included in the expenses. So you have all these expenses, but the mortgage is not included in the expenses. So that's just one little caveat that I'm not sure why they do it that way, but NOI is used for a lot of things. One of the things it's used for is to see how much you can get a company or a mortgage broker or company to lend on the property. So it's used to know what to sell for. It's used to know what to buy for. It's used to, to figure out the cap rate. So it's one of the most used things. And it's going to take you a while to learn these terms. It's actually really simple once you get used to it. But like anything, times over equals certainty. So the amount of times you go over this, the more certain you're going to get about it, or you're going to get at dealing with it and calculating it. And just so you know, guys, I looked up net operating income like 3 or 4 times, cap rate several times, just to remind myself, when I would step away from multifamily, back when I just played around in it, I was doing regular single family homes. I'd step away from it, or I'd underwrite a deal, and then it would be 6 or 8 months later, and I'd be like, what does that mean again? So it just takes times over to equal certainty. So now let's talk about cap rate. Cap rate is really simple. It's net operating income divided by price. Or you could also say value. Depends on if you're buying or selling, right? If you're buying, it's going to be someone's going to give you a price, and then it's actually really truly it's mostly value, but some people say price. Same thing. Let's not get too far in the weeds there. So that's the cap rate, and a cap rate is let's say a larger cap rate. Large equals lower price. So it's kind of inverse. And then a lower or smaller equals higher price. So really what a cap rate is, it's a capitalization rate. So in simple terms, if you're an investor, you're like, I'm going to spend $1 million on this. If it's a 5 cap, then that means it's going to bring you, what is that, 50,000? Oh my gosh, I should know that. $1 million. It's all right, I'm learning too. Times 0.05. Yeah, 50, I was right. So basically the cap rate's like, if I spend $1 million and it's a 5 cap, I'll make 50,000 back in a year, by the way. It's all based on annualized. Almost everything we do in multifamily and commercial real estate is what we call annual or annualized. Okay, so a larger cap rate means it's a lower price, right? So if you see as an investor, you're trying to always get let's see here. Investor, you're always trying to get a higher cap rate because that means you're going to get more money back, right? If it's a 6 cap on $1 million, you get 60, right? Instead of 50. But as a seller, you always want to have a smaller cap rate. Because the smaller the cap rate, the return you're going to give the guy, the more money you get. So, and these cap rates are, they move with the market, right? They're very much dictated by mortgages, mortgage prices, and also by just what the market will bear. So it's kind of cool because the cap rates are just set by previous sales, and you can kind of see what things are trading for. One more point I'll make on this before we jump into the actual napkin underwriting formula is that you want to have a cap rate that is equal or greater than your mortgage or your debt. I should start calling it debt. I'm used to calling it mortgage because it's more of the single family industry than your interest rate, so your debt rate. Or let's say interest rate. And why is that? I mean, it's pretty simple. If you have a 5 cap, let's say the broker's trying to sell you something for a 4 cap, which the one we're looking at today is even worse than that. And the market rates are 5.6. I mean, it's pretty obvious that's a problem because you're showing yourself right there that it's costing me this much to have the money to buy this, but the thing's only giving me that. So you want to have the opposite to be true. You want your cap rate to be 5.6 and your interest rate to be 4, or all the variables in between. But you get the idea. So something to always remember, just a real simple. As my coffee maker turns off in the other room. Something always to remember is to just try to keep your cap rate higher than your interest rate. Very simple. That's a really good, I guess, datum or axiom or maxim, you might say, is to just always remember that. You want to have a higher cap rate than the rate of your debt. Okay, cool. So now let's jump into what is napkin underwriting. So the reason they call it napkin underwriting is because literally you could take a napkin in a restaurant, you could be like, oh yeah, does it work? Does it work? No, oh, what? And then you're like, that guy's charging too much, or that's a great deal. Now, when we go through it, if this is your first time, it's going to take a little longer for you to see and figure that out, but you will learn it fast, and it is not that complicated. So what is it? It is the number of units times the average rents, let's call it average monthly rent, And then we're going to annualize that. So we're going to times that by 12. And then, let's see, this would equal what we're going to call gross rents. Other people call it total income. But we're just going to call it gross rents. So I don't like to confuse you. Like, there's people do stuff differently, you know, but most people call it gross rents. And then what we're going to do from there is, now that we have our gross rents, we are going to take out our vacancy rate. So we're going to times it by a vacancy rate. And then, oops, I forgot one right here, sorry. We're going to add in other income. See, I'm not perfect. All right, so equals gross rents times vacancy rate. And then we've got gross rents times vacancy rate. And then we're going to times this by our expense ratio. And this will equal NOI. Did I miss anything? Number of units times average monthly rent times 12 plus any other income that you have equals gross rents times vacancy rate. Oops. Yeah, that's right. Gross rents times vacancy rate times expense ratio equals NOI. So it's a really simple formula, even though I probably made it confusing, but it's actually really simple. So what we'll do is we're going to use this bad boy right here for our example today. This is a property that we just got done looking at. Has a lot of problems. It has a whole storyline that goes with it, but I'm not going to get into the storyline because this is lesson 1 of this module. In lesson 2, we're going to deep dive on this bad boy, and I'm going to tell you all the stuff that you want to know why the property sucks. But everything for the right price, right? Okay, so let's go down here. Now you're probably curious, like, why does it suck? It looks really nice. They always make stuff look really nice. Okay, so let's use this as our example. So what I'm going to do is, this is called an operating memorandum that we're looking at here. And usually you're going to get this plus a T12, which is basically the accounting for the last 12 months. And we'll look into that deeper on the next lesson. And you're also going to get rent rolls. Those are the main primary things that you're going to get from the broker. I believe we talked about that in the previous lesson. So we're going to pull our data here. The first thing we need to know is our number of units. So we know that, let's see here. We know that it has 117 units. And we need to times that by the average monthly rent, which is 1,529. Now, little note here, make sure that this is, let me go back to our other screen so you guys can see me writing. Hold on. How do I do that? There we go. So you got to make sure that these are current. Not meaning, are the tenants paid up? I mean, is this what they're getting right now? Because brokers do a lot of pro forma stuff, just be like, oh, this is what it could do. This is why we're trying to sell it for so much. Because if you do all of these things and everything works out perfect, it's going to be worth another $10 million. So here's our pro forma numbers, and they're going to give you the rents of what, they could be based on the market, which may or may not be accurate. But you don't want to use that because you're buying it as is, right? It's not like they're going to put all those extra rents in there. You're buying it as it is. So this is the current rents, right? And then the next thing we're looking at, or actually, let's just times this out real quick. Bring out our trusty little calculator here. Clear. Let's see, I wonder if this thing gets any smaller. Give me a second. Nope, that's as small as it gets. Okay, so we'll do 117 times 1529 times 12 equals. That gives us our annualized rents of $2,046,000. 716. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, in this particular case, let's see here. I have to make a change here, guys. I knew I put that in there. I knew something was wrong here. So the other income is actually not here. It is right here. Because there is no vacancy rate in other income, right? Don't worry, we'll go over this a couple times. So it is not there. Because you don't want to take a vacancy rate out of other income because there's no, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so back to our example. So now we've got 2,146,000 and some change, and we're going to times it by a vacancy rate. So on this particular property, I actually looked at the rent roll, and I could show you guys that, and I will show it to you in the lesson 2, but just trust me, the way you get a vacancy rate is you just go through the rent roll and count the number of vacants, right? This particular property has 12% vacancy. So if it has 12% vacancy, then what that means is that it's 88% occupied. Would you agree? So it's easier just to take this number and times it by 0.88. You can do the math the other way if you want, but trust me, this is a lot easier. So what we're saying right now is we're saying 12% of this building is empty. So that means, you know, minus that from 100, that means 88% is occupied. So this number right here, we're really only collecting 88% of it because it's based off of these numbers here, and we're saying that all 117 times this equals this. But the truth of the matter is that all 117 aren't full. There's like 13 or 14 or whatever that are empty. So now we have to take that back off. So what we'll do here is we'll bring over our trusty little calculator, and we'll times it by times 0.88. So there's our new number. And now we get to add in other income. So quick note on other income. This is a pretty big building. Like, this building's too big for a first building for most people. Like I talked to you guys about in the earlier modules, it's about well, they want 30 million. It's worth maybe 24. Spoiler alert. Okay, so in bigger buildings, there is a lot more. You have to pay a little bit more close attention to other income, because this building in particular, it has like, I'll just show you over here. We're talking about it, give you an actual visual example. It has like pet fees of $350. Plus they're counting rubs, which is how they charge the tenants back for rubs, is a system of how they can recharge the tenants back for the electricity and things that they're paying for. So they're using that as other income. So moral of the story, they've got a ton of other income: parcel lockers, solar fee, service fee. I mean, I don't even know what a cam charge is. Somebody probably does, but I don't. So anyway, they got a ton of other income. So in this particular property, we'll go back and we're going to say, I know that what their other income is. It's 122,000. So we're going to add our other income. And then we are going to, let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Calculator, come here. There you are. Okay. Plus 123 equals 2,011,110. So another thing I'll mention to you guys, a lot of times people just eliminate the last 3 numbers and they just deal in thousands, but I don't want to confuse you. So if you ever see, like, a lot of times you'll see the math and it'll just be 188 plus 122 equals 2011. And that's actually how I do it too, but I just want to like show it to you guys in full math so it doesn't get any too confusing. Not that you're not smart, because I know you're super smart. Okay, so now we're going to times it by the expense ratio. So I have to talk about this for a minute. Expense ratios is one of the areas where brokers try to, I want to say the word cheat, but I don't want to say brokers cheat. But they do try to, they're basically, let's just put it this way. they have a fiduciary, hard word to say, duty to the seller. So their job is to make the numbers. I didn't say cook the books. I said make the numbers as good as they possibly can. And so that's why our job is, it's almost like a detective. Like we're going to go in there and undo all that crap. And I'm going to show you more of that in lesson 2. But they're always trying to push everything as far as they can to justify this highest number to get their, because usually the seller wants way more than it's worth. And then the broker was like, well, I can only try to push it so far. And then, depending on market conditions. And that's why, right now the market's doing a lot of stuff. So long story short, you want to use a ratio of 0.45. Now, that's pretty conservative. If you want to be super conservative, and if you're doing a lot of smaller stuff, just use a ratio of 0.50. Now, what that means is, out of this amount of money, ooh, the sun just came out. Whew. Out of this amount of money, you get to keep, or this is how much it costs to operate the place. So, and this is what's going to give us our, net operating income. So obviously, right now we're talking gross terms, gross money over here, and we're going to get to NOI. So we're going to use the number 45. Now, a lot of brokers are going to try to tell you that it's a 40% or a 30% or, this on the, on one of them, we had this one right here that we're just looking at. They were saying that it was a 25% expense ratio, which is absolutely ridiculous. And if you guys are in my Titan real estate group, which you should be, it's on WhatsApp. I posted it in there that we're looking at 117 units and they're saying that it's at 25%. And everybody is like laughing and saying, that could never happen. But so that's my point. Like these guys are saying that they are at 25% and they're not. So we're just going to get you used to using a good solid number. Now, if you really want to be conservative, use a 50, especially if it's a smaller deal. Like if it's under 40 units, you might be safer just doing a 50, but if it's above, let's just write this out for you. So you're going to learn this stuff over time by just reading and looking at these deals, and you'll know. So this would be less than 40 units. But I want you guys looking at under 10 million and over 60 units or in that neighborhood so that you can get economies of scale and you can pay it out a full-time manager. Anyway, I digress. So next we got to times this by expense ratio. So if we know that our expense ratio is 45, then that means we're going to keep 0.55 of this amount. So I can just times this by 0.55. Does that make sense? Same thing we did up here. We're saying that out of the $2 million, I get to keep 55% of it because 45 is going to expenses, okay? So let's do that real quick. I'm going through this, slowly as I can, and times over is going to equal certainty for you guys, but you can do this so fast. I'll show you on another one real quick after this. Okay, so now we've got the number we were looking for, which is our NOI, and that is 106. And we got 110 again. That's so crazy that keeps showing up. Look at this, 110, 110, 110. I'm gonna have to look up the spiritual meaning of that. All right. Okay, so now we got our NOI. We've talked about what NOI is. We remember that NOI is net operating income, and that it's gross revenue plus other income minus expenses. And that's basically what we just did, right? I mean, what we did right there was we just took a building and we calculated the NOI. Now, on this building, or on this operating memorandum here, they're going to tell you what the NOI is. So you're like, well, Brad, why do we need to do it that way? Because you always got to check their NOI. Let me show you why. Come on now. Fully renovated, modern amenities. Look at this. They're saying their NOI is 1,654. We came up with $400,000 less. So let me just show you how much that makes a difference. If we had 400K times our cap rate of 0.05, let me just do that real quick. or divided by, right? Divided by 0.05. I just want to illustrate something for you. Obviously, I'm not doing it right. Oh, yeah, so yeah, I am. Okay, so, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. So I just did 400 divided by 0.05. I took the thousands off. Basically, this flub of them saying there's 400K more in the NOI is getting them to try to justify 8 million, because I just did the short end, $8 million more in a sales price. So that's why you don't just look at someone's operating agreement, especially this one. They're usually not off this much. Sometimes they are. That's why you don't just take this number and figure out your cap rate. Oh, so no, it's a good cap. No, you have to go through and you have to look at all the stuff that we went through. And this is just phase one, guys. This is just the napkin stuff, but you can't just take their NOI. Now, there are times when it's accurate, but I would say 4 out of 5 times or 9 out of 10 times, it is not accurate. So let's go back. Okay. There's so much I want to tell you, but I gotta stay focused. So now we want to figure out our cap rate. So we know that our NOI is 106, 110, and then this is our NOI, and then we got to figure out our purchase price, or the asking price, or the whisper price, which I'm going to tell you about that right now. So a lot of times on these deals, I think we went into this, but see, it says price market. Well, they're not going to put a price, because if they put a price and the market would have brought them more, no one's going to bring them more. You know what I mean? Or maybe a little bit more, but they always try to go market. So basically what that means in simple terms is whoever's going to offer us the most money that also has the highest ability to close. That's all that means. So that's why they call it a whisper price, because you got to call up the broker. You're like, hey man, how much is this going to sell for? Or what are you guys trying to get on this? And it's not like he really whispers, hey, we're trying to get 21 million. But that's why they call it a whisper price, because they're not advertising it. But if you ask them, hey, what is the whisper price? Or what are you guys trying to get on this? Or what does the seller need to make this work? Then they'll give you the price. So in this case, these guys, can you imagine they might be a little unrealistic? So they're asking their whisper, or should I write this out? Okay, so their whisper was 31 million, and then they got it under contract, it didn't sell, and now it's 29 million, which is way high. So 29, you're starting to see why I cut off the last 3 zeros. So we can actually do this real quick. Whoa, maybe. All right, so clear, and this time I'm only going to do it by the thousands. So watch this. I'm going to use these numbers right here. That's going to work because it'll tell me what I want to know. So 1106 divided by 29,000 thousands, basically 29,000 thousands equals nasty cap rate, right? So remember I told you low is bad. It means it's priced too high. And so let's just write this out real quick. So what does that say? It says 0.038. So that means you move the decimal over 2 to the right for a percentage. So that's a 3.8% cap. Not very good, guys. Our current interest rates are 5.6 as of the recording of this. So this is way, I mean, this would just be a negative deal, right? So that's what we found out right there. That's the end of a napkin underwriting. So here I am, I'm done with my napkin, and I'm like, what's this broker smoking, right? She's like, this is crazy. And that's basically what happened. And this is the second time they're trying to sell it. So I don't know what they're trying to do. But sometimes that can be an opportunity too, because I don't think a lot of people have looked at the deal. No one wants to buy it because people are smart. No one's going to go, quote unquote, write a $29 million check for this building, because they're just going to lose money. Like, they're going to lose money every single month because their cost of money is 5.6 and they're making 3.8. Now there's a little more that goes into it, but for the sake of this, of what I want you guys to learn, those two numbers tell you there's a problem, right? You're like, okay, so I'm going to spend let's just say I spend 29 million, and again, I'm oversimplifying this, but I just want to illustrate it. Let's just say I spend 29 million, which we never would, and I'm losing, what is that? What's the difference between 5.6 and 3.8? It is 1.8, right? I'm losing times 0.018 equals, that's how much money I lose a year. Just based on the cost of debt. That doesn't, I mean, again, it's much more complicated than that, but so why would you do that, right? Well, there is times and places you would do that, but that's beyond, well, maybe we'll talk about that in the number 2, but it's a bad deal. That's all you need to know. Okay, so let's do another one real quick. So let's just say, just so it's simple, let's just make up some stuff so I can show you how quick this can actually be done. So let's say we have 100 units and they're at 1,500 each, and it's 95% occupied, and it's got zero other income, because some of the smaller deals don't, and it has 0.545 expense ratio, and that's it. Like, watch how fast I can do this. Like, I mean, I have to look some of this stuff up, right? But if I know these things, this is how quick. That's not what I wanted to do. Oh, the calculator. Come here, calculator. Okay, so you're just going to say, and once you get quick at this, and I've always been quick at math, so I apologize if I'm going through this too fast, but I want to show you that it's not that hard. So 100 times 1,500 times 0.95, and then literally, I know there's a 0 there, and I know that the 0.45 means 0.55, right? Because that means I get to keep 0.5. So I'm just going to say times 0.55 equals, wow. When I said it was easy, I didn't mean it was easy. I meant that it's easy for smart people. Okay, 100 times 1,500. Maybe I'll just equal them out so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. Okay, so that's 150,000. Obviously, you're like, I did that in my head, right? Times 0.95 equals 142 times, I think I might have said point. Is that right? What am I doing wrong here? That is the same number. Bear with me while I figure out where I messed this up. Let's see. Oh, snap. Okay, I know what we did. I do this all the time, actually. We forgot to, why didn't you guys tell me? We forgot to annualize it. Told you this is easy, but only if you're smart. Okay, so calculator, come back. Let's do this one more time and it'll be super easy. So 100 times 1,500. So 100 units times 1,500 average rents, not pro forma rents, average rents, times an occupancy of, it's got a vacancy rate of 5%, so it's got an occupancy of 0.95 equals, and then we're going to annualize that because that's per month, guys. That's the per month income. So we're going to annualize that times 12 equals, now we're talking. And we're going to times that by 0.55 because we got to keep 55% of that because we have 45% expenses. Boom, there's an NOI. Now, I'm guessing a property like this is going to sell for about 22 million. No, it's going to sell for about 18 million just because I've looked at a lot of these. So I'm going to divide that by 18 million and we'll see what the cap rate is. Market cap on that should be around 5%. 940, 50 divided by 18, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There we go. So what is our cap rate? 5.2%. So that, I would say, if you had a 100-unit building, 1,500, 95% occupied, that expense ratio, this would be a good price for it, or pretty close, because what's our interest rate? Our interest rate is 5.6, so we're not quite there yet. So maybe you get her down to 16 and you got a good deal. 16 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. So hopefully that helps you guys. You can see that it can actually be done pretty quick. It's not that complicated. Quick review, we did a review, we'll do it one more time. It's number of units times the average monthly rent, then you're gonna annualize it, then you're gonna get a gross rent, then you're gonna times it by a vacancy rate, then you're gonna add other income, and then you're gonna times it by your expense ratio. Boom, you get your net operating income, bring that down to your NOI formula, which is just NOI over purchase price equals a cap rate. All right. What else? Oh, I had that covered up the whole time I did that. Number of units times average monthly rent times 12, annualizing it, gives you our gross rent. And then vacancy rate, times it by the vacancy rate, plus the other income, times it by the expense ratio, gives you the NOI. And then you've got your NOI formula down here. You got NOI divided by purchase price, gives you your cap rate. So that's it, guys. So this is what I'm going to consider lesson 1 of analyzing, how to analyze the deals. In lesson 2, we're going to look a lot closer. We're going to pull up the T12, the rent rolls. We're going to go into the operating memorandum a little bit deeper, and we're going to find out, what's going on here. And then we're going to be kind of smart at that point. Like, you're not smart enough to go buy the building. Well, maybe you are, but I'm not. Then at that point, you're educated enough to talk to a broker. You're educated to talk to a debt broker as well. You're educated enough to bring this to your senior investor. You can bring it to me. I would love to work with you. You can send me your deals after you've done this, of course, to Brad at TitanACQ.com. And yes, you're getting good, and you're starting to analyze deals. And then when you get deals a little bit further, like this, remember, this here is going to take away 95% of the deals. You're just like, I'm done with that deal. And that's what you want. The faster you eliminate deals, the faster you get to your money. But then once you get a better deal, you start taking it further. Then you're going to go to phase 2, which we're talking about next. And then you're going to go on from there, and you're going to have people that are higher level than you that are on your team that are going to show you why that it's a great deal or why it's a bad deal. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I learned. And every time you do this, you're going to get better and better and better and better. So hope that makes sense. I'll see you in lesson number 2. Peace.